Hello, everybody. This is the second BIBA vlog of this month, which is a month that is celebrating hashtag BCMC, the Black Composer Miniature Challenge. It has been a year since Castle of Our Skins put together the hashtag BCMC, and almost a year since we started broadcasting the videos weekly. We had 18 wonderful submissions, and one of the composers of one of those submissions is with us right now, and that is, of course, the ever so lovely Brittany J Green. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here, and can't believe it's been a year since we had BCMC. It's
Right?
been a crazy fast, but also very slow year. So that's pretty exciting.
Yes, it has definitely been a year in every sense of the term. So, where are you joining in from?
I am joining in from Durham, North Carolina, in the United States, and it's nice and warm. We're starting to get some of that spring/summer weather, but it's not too hot, so it's been really nice.
Excellent. And I understand you are doing your PhD at Duke University.
Yeah. So I'm gearing up for year 3 in August.
That
I
is
know time flies.
incredible. Wonderful. And how do you like Duke so far?
I've really enjoyed it. There's a lot of great like interdisciplinary stuff going on here, so it's been really great in the music department, but then also being able to connect with other artists, dancers, video artists, etc. So it's been like really fun and generative place to be.
Excellent. Yeah, one of my good friends, George Lamb, went to Duke, and
Oh,
he
nice.
also had a wonderful time there. And do you know what you're going to do yet for your big thesis?
I don't, which I need to figure that out this summer probably and into the fall because I'm
Have you
gonna have to start preparing for preliminary exams quite soon.
definitely? Have you seen any of those thesis generators online?
No, I haven't seen those. I've seen the one. I don't think it's a generator. I think it's a website where people like write a poem that explains their thesis, and it's like I think it's like a haiku that they
Ah.
do, which is like really interesting. But I haven't seen any of the generators. Maybe I should try that out.
Yeah, there are some sound art thesis title generators that work really well. I hate to say it. I'll have to pass it along. At any rate, so I would love for you to tell the Biba vlog world a little bit about yourself and how you got into composition and music in general.
Sure. So I got into music sort of late. I was maybe 11. I started playing clarinet in my middle school band and enjoyed that and continued doing that through high school. And then in high school, I kind of got interested in music theory and composition. And so that was something I really started doing. But I actually ended up deciding to go to school for music education for my undergrad. So I did that, taught for about 3 years, and then decided I want to do composition full time. I had been continually composing throughout that time, but I was like, I'm just going to jump in feet first and see what happens. I can always come back to teaching if I don't like it. And I ended up liking it. So I went and got my master's in composition. And then after that, I was a composer in residence for a young composers program, which worked with K through 5 students in Greenville, North Carolina, with music composition, both acoustic composition with like classroom instruments, and also some electronic music using Macs and using GarageBand, other kinds of digital audio workstations. And then from there, I went to Duke, and that's kind of where I am now, just continuing to work on my PhD and also just continuing to write music and explore different ways to play with sound.
That's incredible. And do you still play clarinet?
Occasionally, not as much as I used to. Particularly like right when I graduated from undergrad, I would still play quite often. But Not as much. It's hard to have the time to balance practicing clarinet and doing things with electronics and composing and being in school. But I mean, you know this as a musician, it's like a balancing act. So there are periods of time where some things get a little more attention than others. But hopefully, I'll cycle back around to putting more time in the clarinet.
Yeah, and you're still extremely young, so you have quite a bit of time to start playing clarinet again if you want to, or if the situation arises where you can get a clarinet gig.
Right.
And yeah, this reminds me of Dorothy Rudmore. I think she also played clarinet before she started studying composition. And she was the only woman in an all male band in her high school. And she just went for it and produced amazing music, of course. And she's still with us today. I unfortunately have not met her, but she's definitely somebody that I really, really want to meet.
Hmm.
Yes. So you also mentioned that you are a practitioner of electronic and electroacoustic composition. And I would love to know how you got involved with that type of practice and what are some of the, I guess, most interesting projects and discoveries you've made with that form.
Sure. So when I was at ECU getting my master's, I took two electronic music classes, and that kind of is what introduced me to it and kind of got me interested in that. And then at the time when I was working on my master's, I was really interested in gesture recognition technology and manipulating sound through that. So I did a lot of work with that. Did some work with VR with at the time, what was it, the Samsung Gear VR goggles, which I don't even know if the Samsung devices still work with those. But I was doing a lot of work with that stuff, and some of that continued over the year after, and then when I got to Durham for Duke. But something that's really interesting, and then of course through that time, I composed like a little bit of electroacoustic music from time to time. But what was really interesting with the pandemic and being home alone, I really like spent a lot of time just delving into electronic music and like really kind of doing that more and kind of starting to transition more towards improvising with electronics, working with video as well. So that's kind of something that has been starting to become a focal point of my output right now. That's like literally a direct result of just COVID and being at home and wanting to create something. And I wanted to do something that was a little more immediate and felt a little more personal to my own voice, and then also felt somewhat relevant. It just seemed, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, like around this time last year, it's like, well, I could write music for live instruments, but at that point we had no clue what was going on, and it's like I don't know uh, what that would lead to. But I was really interested in just improvising and actually like really got into it. So that's kind of where my music's been going recently.
I love that. Yeah, I always say that the pandemic made video artists out of many composers, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Uh, and I always get nervous because I don't have fancy gear. So when I make videos, I always feel like I'm that low tech guy that's just putting together random stuff with this really horrible video editor. But what can you do, right?
Well, that can be an aesthetic too. You could just make it an aesthetic choice.
Hashtag low key, hashtag low quality fabulous or something like that. Trash fab. I'm gonna start that. So you are one of, I want to say, two composers that made a miniature for hashtag BCMC that included an electronic track. And as I was digging into your piece Connected, which is such a vibe, I really had this visual picture in my mind because there's this slight text involved. There may be the sounds of cars passing by. I'm not sure. So I would love for you to talk to me about the electronic sounds that you implemented within this miniature.
Yeah, so for that piece, that's one of a couple pieces that I wrote in a very particular way that I don't do often, which is writing everything completely with electronics. And then from there, kind of abstracting out instrumental parts. So in that piece, there's like some field recordings of cars driving by, some chatter. And what really kind of drew me to that was just noticing how quiet everything was, because that was like peak pandemic time,
Yeah.
where at least in North Carolina, we were like all on lockdown. And so I live like near downtown in Durham, and like you walk, usually before the pandemic, I live like right by a highway, and you just always hear cars going by. You know, if it's like Friday night, Saturday night, you hear people walking by, or to the bars, and it was just so quiet, and it was like almost eerie, like when you would go out, like maybe to go get groceries, and like no one's on the road. And so I was like really fascinated about making a piece that kind of reincorporated those sounds that I was missing, and thinking about how this those things connect us, like as we're commuting to one another or commuting to places where we're going to fellowship with people, which is something that we really took for granted, and then all of a sudden we don't have that now. So that was kind of the starting point of the piece, is those field recordings, and then from there I kind of built out these really like rhythmic grooves out of that. And then I abstracted those into the piano part and viola part, and then left some of those in the electronics.
That is amazing. Yeah, it's almost as if this sonic backdrop was filling in a missing puzzle piece that the pandemic took away from Durham. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I love that music can do that for us in a very
Exactly.
particular way. Yeah. And have you since then approached other pieces in this way?
No, I I think that's the last piece I wrote that way. I feel like there was another. Yeah, there was two other pieces that I did similar to that. But I haven't done that actually since. So I don't know. That was just like a weird time where I was doing that, but maybe I should. It's like a really interesting approach to kind of writing music, and like kind of finding these like hidden melodies or hidden grooves, and like just a large layer of like electronic stuff, and then just like abstracting that. And I find that it is kind of generative, because then you start finding these like kind of hidden like polyrhythms and interesting melodic lines that you can kind of draw out, and it works really great for like piano and other like kind of percussive instruments. So maybe I'll circle back to that, but I haven't done it since.
All right. Yeah, well, I'm definitely not stopping you. I think the process is really wonderful and definitely is worth exploring. So, you have been involved in some really amazing projects over the past couple of years, and unfortunately, the pandemic altered the front face of these projects. But I imagine the projects have now been adapted to an online format, and y'all are just pushing ahead. COVID be damned. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about some of those projects that you've been involved with over these past years.
Yeah. So probably the biggest project that I was working on when COVID hit was collaborating with the Jack Quartet. And we were planning, I was going to go up there in March for some rehearsals. And then, like, the week before, everything like shut down with COVID. So we had to postpone that. But it's been interesting kind of trying to do rehearsals and workshop music virtually, and navigating that and finding tools for that, which I think ultimately is like really good that we and not just we as in myself and the Jack Quartet, but just musicians in general, that we kind of work through some of that, because even when things kind of get back to being able to be in person again, we now have these other tools that can really help us have more opportunities. When you think about like the feasibility of travel and the expense of that, now we have these other options. So maybe people who can't afford that, or people whose schedules just don't make time for that, we can kind of have these other avenues that we can collaborate with. So that was interesting. But in a nice turn of events, they're actually going to be premiering the music that came out of that collaboration live. So they'll be premiering my string quartet actually next week, I think on Saturday. Yep, next Saturday at the Waco Fest, which will be up in Strathmore, right outside of DC. So it's nice out. So they'll be doing like a live and also a virtual streaming of the festival, and people will be separated in pods that are separated by people who are in family members, and all the musicians will be vaccinated and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like, because I've never been to a festival that looked like that, because COVID's a new thing, and so all of the kind of structure around how we do things will be different. So that'll be exciting to see. Um, I also was working on a collaboration. I'm still working on it with a video artist here in Durham, Kate Alexandrite, and we're doing an installation called Black Echoes, Brick Ripples, which kind of explores some bamboo trails that are behind Duke's Arts Annex, and kind of the history of that land. It used to be owned by the Fitzgerald family, which was a very prominent Black family here in Durham, heavily involved in real estate and the business sector here. And so kind of exploring the history of that land, and kind of how that land has been impacted by the gentrification of the area, as well as interactions with the university and things like that. So that was, because we were like in the middle of just starting that. We were just starting to collect field recordings, and then everything shut down. So we've been mostly collaborating virtually over that, which is funny because we live like walking distance from one another. And the land itself is also walking distance from where we live, but we would kind of like work virtually, or Kate might go out and do some recordings and then report back, and then maybe I would go out. So it's kind of like we're like working around each other, even though we're so close. But now we're starting to kind of pick back up in-person things. So that's been interesting too, especially for something that is we envision as a live installation that involves a lot of kind of technical logistics, and kind of working through, okay, well, how can we talk through these things virtually, and like what can we work on virtually or independently, and what do we have to kind of save until we're both vaccinated and can be in the same place again. So that's been interesting to navigate as well.
Nice. And for the Jack Quartet project, are you going to Strathmore to see the concert in person?
Yeah, so I'll actually be at the festival Friday. I'll be performing an improvisation set with live electronics, and then I'll be there Saturday as well to hear the premiere. And then in August, they'll be premiering another piece that I wrote for them for strings and electronics at Time Spans up in New York. So I'll be at that as well.
That is amazing. It's so great to hear that these live performances are picking back up, and that you're going to get a chance to hear these pieces and experience them in real life. It's so important. It really is. And for the installation, when do you have a date for the exhibition?
We don't have a date. We're shooting for spring 2022. It's a lot of T's. So we're still in the process of finalizing the date and spaces for that, but I'll definitely keep people posted.
All right. Well, I look forward to catching up on both of those string quartets, and hopefully your improvisation will also be recorded. I would love to check that out. And hopefully I can catch the installation in real life too, if I'm in the States. I would love to hop on down and check it out in real life.
Definitely.
Yes, and also just meet you because I haven't met you in real
Yeah.
life.
I
So,
just realized that when you said that. It's like, oh, I have not actually been in the same physical space as you.
but it's gonna happen. So, well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for your beautiful piece, Connected. It has been such a great part of the BCMC project. And for all of you watching, you can purchase the anthology to see the sheet music for Brittany J Green's Connected at castleskins.org. If you see our tabs, there is a category store. And if you just mouse over, the first entry is the BCMC anthology, which is now available for a digital download. You'll have to connect with Brittany if you want the electronic part, which is necessary to perform the piece. Otherwise, check out that score and the score to the 17 other fantastic entries and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.